Franklin, big fight's been announced recently for yourself, Jamie
Yeah.
TKV. Um, it's a bit of a strange one because this is somebody who you sparred a lot of rounds with, somebody you fought in the amateurs, and somebody who you considered a friend. Talk to me about how this fight came around, first of all.
Honestly, I think it was just it's timing is a funny thing. Do you know what I mean? We definitely both know each other for a long time. Um, it was like I said, literally a timing thing. I don't think it was something that we could have probably foreseen maybe a year ago or so. But I hadn't fought in a year, so I'm on my comeback fight, and this was the available option that made sense. You know what I mean? So of course we took it, and we're here.
I mentioned you both fought in the amateurs. You
Mm.
lost that fight by 1 point, and you also had a point deducted as well. Um, do you think, or was you shocked that Jamie took this fight on?
Um, Not shocked. I think it was a situation that obviously, um, he was also in a situation that this fight was the only one that made sense for him. I think, you know, uh, based on what he has going on, I can't speak on his situation, but I'm sure he looked around and he just realized this was the only thing that made sense. And like I said previously, I think, we're in an era now where a lot of heavyweights have to kind of, get it on because quite frankly, a lot of us are just floating about in and around the British scene. So I think domestically, this matchup is coming at the right time.
Go back to that amateur fight and talk me through that, in your opinion, how that fight went, what you could have done differently. Obviously, it's a long time ago. You both have changed as and evolved as fighters, but at that time, talk me through it.
I mean, at that time, I was, doing okay. I think I was a bit of a winning streak at the time. And I just finished sparring Chisora. They went really well. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to go into this fight and, see if I might go pro, I might not. I wasn't too sure. But I thought I'm going to have one more go of it in the Londons. And we happened to meet in the finals. And, he pretty much fought a similar style, I guess, to how he fought in the pros. Very much, come forward, putting pressure. I was, trying to outbox, use the jab, trying to kind of outpoint him over the distance, and the fight was very close. I lost that fight. I felt upset at the time, but I wished him all the best, and life carried on. I think a few weeks later, my mom passed, so all of a sudden, amateur boxing was no longer really what I was thinking about. I had to kind of get on with life, and then later that year, I went pro. I believe he went on to lose to Delicious, I think, somewhere later, and then I think he, went continued with the Congolese amateur team and turned pro later. So yeah, I think we were on very different trajectories at that point after that fight. And it's only come around now, several years, 5 years later, you know.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that fight, but also sparring partners before that fight in the amateurs. What did you learn from? I mean, you've sparred everybody. Every time I speak to you, there's always a new name that's popped up. You sparred somebody here, there, and everywhere in the British scene. What were those rounds like when you sparred Jamie? Although it was a long time ago, was it
Yeah,
useful?
I think they were always competitive. In the very beginning, when we first met each other, I was kind of starting my journey as an amateur boxer, and he'd already had a few fights. And then as the years gone on, um, the sparring was always great. So I used to call him for sparring, he used to call me for sparring. We both benefited a lot from the rounds. And I would definitely attribute a lot of the things I've done in my amateurs, partly to some of those spars. I won Haringey's, I won London intermediates offer just that good sparring. It put me in good stead for things a lot later. And yeah, even when I was going pro, I still called him for sparring. And I think up until maybe our first fight, we were sparring quite often. Up until my first professional debut, we were sparring quite often. So yeah, definitely it was good. It was good work. I can't complain at all.
How many rounds would you say you sparred, or how many years of time had passed since you've been sparring?
I don't think we've sparred now a good maybe 2 years now, maybe. Yeah, so a good amount of time's passed. I don't think it's been due to any special consideration. It was just that, like I said, different trajectories. He had his own fights to focus on and a different situation, and I had my own fights to focus on. I had the Hosea fights, then I went on a fight with Robinson. So my preparation was a bit different. And then after that, I had a hand injury. So I hadn't been boxing for a year. Um, and yeah, so yeah, like I said, it's just been different trajectories completely. So we hadn't really met each other in quite some time.
This is another fight where you're the away fighter, the underdog. Why are you constantly the underdog and never the A side when you're coming through with these victories? I know how good you are. What's
Yeah.
going on, Franco?
Brother, I can't even say, man. I think it's just one of those things that I just have to take the fight as they come. But I just look for the best possible matchups, and at the moment, it just happened with me happen to be on the B side, and I just say, so be it. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to change how I go about my job, but it's not going to change what I know I have to do. So that's literally what it's been. But yeah, for sure, listen, it just keeps happening, and here I am doing what I have to do.
Is it frustrating for you at all?
um, Honestly, no, because one thing I've realized is that the A side and that kind of thing is only helpful if you're just kind of you're being built towards something or being built towards a specific fight. But in a 50-50 matchup, there's no real benefit to A side or B side. You know what I mean? I mean, at the highest levels, we saw that with Usyk, for example. When you're talking real 50-50 matchups, all of that stuff kind of goes out the window once the bell rings, and it's about who's the better man on the night. So, but I think definitely on the way up, if you're being built, A side and B side is definitely a consideration that would be nice. But like I said, I've had three 50-50s now. This will be my fourth one, and I think because I know what type of fight it is, I don't think I pay too much attention to that.
Do you feel any less pressure going into a fight because you're not the promoter's fighter?
No, because if anything, is it has a different pressure of its own because I know how important a win is for me and how detrimental a loss is because the likelihood of being able to come back into a cushy situation after a loss is not always there. It will be very much an uncertain road. So I have to ensure that every fight I'm having on the B side, I have to put my best foot forward.
So you obviously say that it's not, it almost adds a different layer of pressure for you because although the B side, you're still fighting for your career, you're fighting to forge your path in boxing and in the sport and towards titles. So do you feel it potentially adds more pressure than the home fighter?
Yes, I think so. And I think, to be really honest, I think it's a good thing. Like, I know some fighters, they try to say, oh, I don't feel no pressure or whatever, but I feed off of it. I feel like I feed off pressure in the sense that it drives my preparation. It makes me that much of a better fighter on the night. And if anything, my worst fights have always been the fights where there was nothing on the line and there was no pressure. I would always perform better when, the it's almost like the odds are stacked against me a bit, and I kind of know, okay, a loss here could be detrimental. That always seems to drive the better performances out of me, and I think it's just because I perform well under those circumstances. Pressure kind of makes the best version of me come out.
Last time we spoke, Franco, we spoke about titles and you want to get to those title fights, whether it be Seven Area, whether it be English, whichever comes first, really. But these sort of fights you're taking, where they are 50-50s, where you're coming out with your hand raised, surely you're moving a lot closer to these title fights than other fighters domestically. And surely it's got to be just around the corner now.
100%. I think this fight will be definitely another, path on there. And I think as I keep taking these challenges and beating them, I think people will start being aware of, my potential and put me in the places that I want to be in. Like I said, I just feel like this period of my life, I really want to utilize to push myself to the max. And fights like this are a big part of that.
I just want to touch on again as well about the B side, the not the promoter fighter. For you, does that make it better for you to be able to forge your path? Because if you keep picking up these wins, you've not tied down to a certain promoter. You can go wherever you want to, whatever the belts may be at the time, etc. A little bit like Fabio Wardy was in the free agent promotional aspect, where he could pick and choose and decide. And now he's fighting out in Saudi. He has just signed a deal with Queensberry and Frank Warren, but he was a free agent for a long time, and he could go whatever home he wanted to go to. Is that something that may work in your favour for you?
100%. I think especially coming through, a lot of fighters are looking for the security of the A sign and the security of a promotional contract. But I feel like post COVID, the boxing industry's changed. You know, this is no longer the days of when AJ and Dylan White and such were coming through. And I think that being the case, uncertainty is everywhere. Even at the lowest levels, you see the top tier matchups and TM14, very much 50-50s, even on so-called ticket shows. That is showing you that there's much more of an element of uncertainty now than there used to be before. Before, you could kind of see a matchup and maybe outside of the headline, you could be reasonably sure who would win. You know what I mean? 80-20%, you'd be like, yeah, I know this guy's got it in the bag. Nowadays, you can't really say that, except for very few fights. Most of the times, it's 50-50s all around the board. And I think that being the case, promotional contracts no longer give you that security that people would have assumed, you know, and I think that is very important that people as fighters realize that and proceed with it. Like me, I had that understanding since. So all the fighters I've took, I've never sat there and thought, oh, you know what, I really need a promotional contract. I've always thought, can I win this fight? If you say yes, okay, go ahead and prepare and do the best I can. I've never sat there thinking, you know, I need someone to look after me or whatever. I don't think so. I think I need to make sure that I'm in a fight that I can win and do what I got to do to win it.
How easy is it for you to decide? Let's say you got offered a fight with somebody and you felt maybe it's a tougher fight than potentially you need right now. How easy is it for the fighter in you to say no, to turn down potentially a decent payday, a potential stepping stone that might move you up the rankings, but it's more risk than reward?
That's a good question. I think it definitely depends on the situation because I think right now I've been blessed enough to be in a situation that any fights I'm actually offered at the minute, I'm very much capable of winning them. You know, there's been very few circumstances, mostly early on, actually, maybe like 3 fights ago, where I would offer fights that were like, oh, I wasn't ready for them, but I was a bit too soon. But recently, over the last maybe 2 years, every fight that's come in front of my way, I've actually been physically ready for in terms of my capabilities and experience. And this is literally just another one of them. I think it's very much going to depend on just, you know, me making sure I'm the better man of the night. But yeah, I think it's so far anyway, so good in terms of the offers and where my ranking and my experience is personally. So far, they're matching up well. I'm very blessed.
So what is it about Jamie TKV, without giving away the game plan, that you feel is a winnable fight for you?
Um, to borrow Tunde Ajayi's saying, everything's timing. He says that a lot, but he's not wrong. This fight, I think, is a timing thing. I think, you know, Jamie's a dangerous fighter, but I make no mistake. I think I would be underrating him and underselling him if I said otherwise. And I'm sure he's aware of the same. He knows me enough to know I'm a dangerous fighter. I think, and as I'm sure as the fights will show when we get on there, the fight don't need selling. Do you know what I mean? Anyone who knows anything about the domestic scene knows we're both dangerous fighters. So, you know, the fight's gonna sell itself in that sense. But I think timing wise, this is a good opportunity for me. Not just because of the fact that he's lost last year or anything like that, but more so because I've been developing all the time. You know, I'm not really focusing on this loss too much because I think this fight will bring the best out of Jamie. Do you know what I mean? Just because of the stakes. Because, you know, I'm sure there could be maybe an element of complacency in his loss or whatever else. But I think this fight will bring the best out of him. But I think the way I am now and my capabilities, you know, I think it will show on the night that, yes, I have developed and progressed a lot more. I think what's in most people's awareness and consciousness is the fight with Hosea. People don't realize that fight's been 2 years ago. That's those 2 years ago. I've been in the gym constantly, even with the injury. Still, I was still constantly training. I've never really been at the gym for a significant period of time in over 2 years. You know, so that I think is what's going to show.
With Jamie, one of his strongest assets is his body work. He's a big body puncher. He likes his body work. Is that something you've come across yet whether in a fight or potentially in the gym sparring?
Um, yes, not in a fight so much because most people I've been fighting have been pretty much headhunters in terms of Hosea and Robertson trying to get stoppages and stuff. But in terms of sparring, yes, for sure. But I don't think him being a body puncher is going to make a significant difference here, because I think we're both of relatively good skill level. So it will very much come down to who can control the proceedings more so than who's the bigger puncher or who's the, stronger body. I don't think it's going to come down to something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think I've proved already with my Robinson win that you being a big puncher is not going to deter me doing what I need to do. I think I've already proved that. Do you know what I mean? So wherever you stopped before has no relative on you, you know?
No, absolutely. I mentioned earlier, Franco, about sparring partners, and you've sparred
Mm.
everybody, it seems. And one person you have sparred is Daniel Dubois. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
got a fight coming up. You shared the ring with him many times at the Peacock Gym. He's fighting Anthony Joshua. Just talk to me a little bit about that fight, how you see it going.
Yes, well, I've been sparring him even recently as well. He's been preparing for Anthony Joshua. And to be honest, his sparring is helping me immensely as well because of the fight I have coming up. I think that is a good reflection of what I need preparation wise. I think Dubois on his side has youth, strength, and athleticism, and he's proven in the gym that he's very much switched on and focused. I think he's definitely gonna have to walk in some fire in that fight about that. Stylistically, he's already proved with Hergovic that he may not be the most elusive heavyweight, and Joshua has a pinpoint jab and high level of accuracy. So I think those two factors mean that he's definitely gonna have to walk through some fire. But I don't think it will be enough to deter him. I think unless Joshua can make a significant mark on him early on, he might run out of steam, because I think what very much people forget is outside of the physical attributes Dubois has in terms of punch power and so on and so forth, he sets a very good work rate. For a heavyweight, considering his size and so on and so forth, he sets a very good work rate consistently over the rounds. Even with the Joyce fight that he was stopped in, he had a very good work rate. Usyk, good work rate. Jarrell Miller, obviously, we saw how that went. He stopped him down the stretch just based on that work rate. Again, Hergovic, the same thing. The pressure got to them. And I think with Joshua, the question will be, can Joshua deter him from fighting at his pace? Because I believe if he fights at his pace, he's going to win that fight. I don't think Joshua is a high work rate fighter. He never has been, really. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. As I'm sure you know, with boxing tactics, depending on how you control the rounds and what you're doing, your work rate might not even be a significant factor. Do you know what I mean? Mayweather made a career out of years for being a very low volume fighter. Gervonta Davis the same, and so on and so forth. You being a low volume fighter, even with the Klitschko's at the heavyweights, they're not high volume fighters neither. You don't have to be throwing a million miles an hour to win a fight and win rounds. But when you have someone like Daniel Dubois in front of you, the ability to deter him in order to get control is very important. And I think that's what this fight will come under. It is not a foregone conclusion the way everyone's thinking. Everyone's, the general consensus, I think, is that Joshua's going to win this. They saw the Hergovic performance, 64 right hands or something crazy like that in 3 rounds. And everyone's thinking, my God, if he eats a rat from Joshua, it's curtains. And listen, I don't disagree. There's a possibility there that if he goes in there like that, it very much might be an early night. But the flip side is, what if he survives that right hand? If he survives it, the fight all of a sudden might be different. Is Joshua going to get discouraged? Do you know what I mean? We don't know. I don't think, as much as Joshua's had very impressive wins, he hasn't had to overcome adversity in several years. He's had very much been, I like to call it an on-top fighter. You're very much on top of the situation. You're always in control of everything. You've never had to overcome adversity in recent fights. And that might play a part, because with this young Dubois in front of you, what are you going to do when adversity comes? Are you still mentally prepared to find a way through? So yeah, I think Dubois is definitely a live underdog, and it will be very interesting to see what happens in 2 weeks. Very, very interesting.
I want to ask you, because I want to get your perspective as a fighter.
Mm.
How valuable is momentum heading into a fight? For example, for Dubois, because of the Hergovic win and things like that.
Very, and I think if anything, that is what will actually give him more of a chance than people expect. Because I'm not disregarding Joshua's wins at all, but one was against a former sparring partner he used to bash up by all accounts, and the other one is an MMA fighter. Now, these are good for building your confidence and letting you know that what you're doing in the gym's working, for sure. But again, no adversity in those fights. Dubois is coming off of fights with Hergovic, with Jarrell Miller, and even with fight with Usyk before that he lost. These are all fights that are character building. He's won two of them, which has been massive for his confidence. But even the one that he lost was a huge test of adversity. And I think having all of the three of them like that back to back mentally puts him in the best space possible for Joshua. Because now it's like, okay, I can approach this fight with Joshua knowing that I've already been tried and tested. You know, I've been hurt, I've been knocked down, and I know I'm going to push through and still not be deterred. I think that's one thing showing the Hergovic fight. Even when he looked like he was badly hurt in the third round, he still continued applying the same amount of pressure, applying the same amount of punches, and still doing the same thing. It didn't seem to put a stop in his work. And I think that would be very, very key with Joshua, because Joshua hurts him. If he can continue applying that momentum in the fight itself, yeah, I think that's when we'll be, seeing maybe a very much an upset.
Do you think the Usyk loss and the Joe Joyce loss will in fact help Dubois because he's took those big fights at a young age. He's still only young now. He's what, 25, 26 years old. He's been through, you mentioned adversity. He's taken defeats. There's no pressure of the undefeated record. He's boxed at the highest level. And yes, he's come unstuck in a couple, but he's learned from that potentially at this young age still.
100%. I mean, put in perspective, I'm 29. I'm a young man myself. And he's younger than me. He's 2 years younger than me. He's what, 26, 27? You know what I mean? Ultimately, the experience he's already had at world level stands him in good stead. There's a fact and it can't be denied. And a lot of those losses he's had happen at a very young age. The only mark I could probably say on Dubois in terms of knocking him would probably say that I think he may not have the highest level of ceiling in terms of skill development, because mentally he's definitely been evolving and changing, but I'm not seeing a huge progression in terms of skill set. And I'm not saying that's a knock on Don or something. It may just be how the man himself is made up, because you've been in boxing 20 plus years. After I think a certain stage, we as fighters have to take responsibility for our own development. You can't blame the trainer for not, becoming as slick as this guy or that guy, but you've been boxing for so long. You can't blame the trainer for everything. And I think this is not something we can blame Don for, but I'm saying the man himself may have, maybe approaching the limits of his development in terms of his ceiling physically. But I think mentally, because of all the experience he's had at such a young age, it puts him almost in terms of a battle-tested warrior even before his time. So I think like I heard Eddie Hearn comment saying about, you might be, shocked at 97,000 at Wembley or whatever. No, I don't believe that will be a factor whatsoever, because of the facts, because of all those things you've mentioned, and the fact that he's doing it at such a young age. He will be more used to this stage than even AJ was at that age. So yeah, I think definitely mentally speaking, he might be the most developed heavyweight in the country relative to his age, for sure.
And I mentioned you've known Daniel a long time from Peacock days, and obviously you mentioned he's sparred him very recently as well. So, we're talking a long, long time, over 5, 6 years, I'd imagine, around that sort of time that you've known him at least. Now, talk to me about his character. He's coming out of his shell a little bit. He's always been a very reserved character for me in media and interviews, etc. But he seems to be coming a little bit out of his shell a little bit more talkative, and even his own sort of version of trash talking, although not quite heavy as such as others. But for him, it's something a bit different. Do you see that evolution of Daniel?
100%. I think, look, the truth of the matter is he's never going to have to give to the gab. You know what I mean? We're not going to see a Muhammad Ali on the mic. I don't think so. It's just not who the man is. But I think over the years, again, it speaks to the comfort of the man in terms of the big stages. Because I feel like he's now starting to kind of come into his own. Like, I've seen him, the way he's approaching media, the way he's approaching conversation, and just how he is as a character. I think definitely he's finding more self-confidence as a man. And I think that has definitely had to do with being at this level for such a long time now. And I think it's definitely going to help him. I don't think he will ever be as TV friendly as Joshua, put it that way. You know what I mean? Let's just keep it what it is. I don't think that's ever going to be his character. But I don't think that will deter him necessarily from being a good fighter. I think it's just who the man is. Do you know what I mean? I don't think we're ever going to see that level of personality from him. It's not who he is, but definitely you can see the growth even when you approach him in the gym and things like that. You can see the confidence emerging in how he relates to people, how he talks to people. Over the years, it's definitely been a marked sign of change.
And just finally, Frank, we mentioned earlier, obviously, you feel he's a very live underdog in this fight. You don't feel it's going to be as one-sided as a lot of fans and social media may see it. But how do you see it? Is it a 50-50 or are you swaying to one way?
It's a 50-50 for sure. I think it's genuinely 50-50. I think I think Joshua might have the edge on skill for sure. But again, boxing doesn't just come down to skill. All the mental and physical attributes also play a huge part. And I think mentally, funnily enough, the edge is actually on Daniel. Do you know what I mean? Funnily enough, the edge is actually on Daniel. Not just in terms of him himself, but also his training team, because Don Charles' experience at these type of fights is immense. With Chisora and even with Daniel already, knowing the type of man you have in an adverse situation plays a big part as well. Ben Davison has not had Joshua in an adverse situation yet. So you don't really know what Ben is going to be doing when Joshua might be going through a crisis moment. And I feel like in fights like this, when it's being fought on the thinnest of margins, these things is what might make the difference. You know, Don's experience with having had these fights before, and obviously, like I said, now knowing Daniel with Hergovic and Jerome Miller and Usyk, I think is going to be a big, big factor here. You know, and it all really depends on what Daniel can do those early rounds. But if he does what he can potentially do, it will be very interesting to see what happens. I'll definitely be tuned in myself.
Absolutely. I'll be tuned in and I'll be tuned into your fight as well, Franco. But that's it for today. Thank you very much for your time. As always, appreciated.
Thank you, brother. So good, so good.